Let me start this video off with a quote. In a hospital, you can find people having the best day of their life, the worst day of their life, the first day of their life, and the last day of their life all under one roof. I got to see all of that in my obstetric and gynecology rotation, and I want to tell you about it.
This story begins in a hospital maternity wing, where the miracle of human birth is a daily commonplace, where sure, efficient, antiseptic routine rules all human life. All new and expecting mothers, all infants just arrived and soon to arrive.
Obstetrics and gynecology is one of those rotations. It's one of those rotations, man, that where you just know whether a medical student has done that rotation or not, just by the way they carry themselves, because of how difficult and demanding that rotation is. It's a good rotation, like, don't get me wrong, but it is a lot to take in, and you see some stuff that just changes your brain chemistry forever. After doing medicine and surgery for the past like 12 weeks, I was completely burnt out, and obstetric and gynecology, although it was very hard, I actually felt something. It was something new, because in med and surg you get really, it becomes numbing and you start to not feel anything after a bit. But obstetric and gynecology, I actually felt something. The first thing I took away from obs and gyn was just how precious life is, and I realized this when I watched my first live birth, and honestly didn't think it would be as emotional as it was, but it really is emotional. And this is so different from med and surg, because in medicine, like, first of all, you get numb to it, as I mentioned, and second of all, it's just like, good news is hard to come by. Good news only comes in the form of either you're getting discharged or the prognosis is not the worst case scenario. Like, maybe they found a benign cyst instead of a cancer, now you're happier, but like, you still have a problem. So there's actually good news in obstetrics. I was pretty anxious that I was gonna pass out, even after seeing so many surgeries, and after seeing everything that I've seen, I'm still weirded out of a small human being coming out of a big human being. Like, it still irks me out thinking about it, but I stayed, and I was a soldier, and I even cut the umbilical cord, so I was really proud of myself. I was in the room silently cheering on this brave woman, and you could just see the pain and exhaustion on her face, and her husband was there. He was also in awe and anxious anxiety, and it was quiet, and there was a burst of activity whenever the contractions would start, and that went on for half an hour, and the midwives were cheering her on, telling her to push, and finally the baby's head popped out, and that moment that the hardest part is over, and then slid out a perfectly formed human being. And I was just so amazed, to be honest. It was a huge feeling of relief and happiness, a goofy kind of happiness with tears. And I think watching that and being there and seeing the parents, seeing the newborn, it's a life-changing experience. And at that point, I even got to cut the umbilical cord, and that's something that I will never forget.
There's your whole future wrapped up in one tiny 8-pound bundle.
In that moment, you realize that you're at a juncture. You're at like a weird point in time where you're seeing how you were brought to this world, and how your mother must have sweat, bled, and broke her back to bring you to this world. And at that point, you can also see, like, in the future, hopefully you have kids, of what the process will be like, what process you'll be going through for your children. It's just a weird chiasm of like the past and the future.
Here is a baby with eyes of blue, straight from heaven right to you. Or, straight from heaven up above, here is a baby for you to love.
On this rotation, I realized just how hard and the struggle people go through to actually have kids, especially if you're infertile or if you're dealing with other medical issues. It's just absolutely insane. Like, the people are facing miscarriages, ectopic pregnancies, multiple rounds of IVF, which are incredibly expensive. And you hear stories of just perseverance and resilience and strength from these women who are not only going through all of this, but managing to hold on to the rest of their lives, and dealing with everything outside of their health, while dealing with like all of these different types of emotions. Then you hear stories or see things that relate to the second half of my quote, of people having the worst day of their life. A lady came into one of our antenatal clinics. She had felt reduced movement, and the doctor did a scan, doctor did an ultrasound scan. We found out that her babies had passed away, unfortunately, and that was absolutely horrible horrible news, and she must have been having the worst day of her life. Hearing that, it was heartbreaking, and my heart still weeps thinking about that. This clinic completely fell silent. The midwives, who I came to know as the strongest people in the hospital, were all of a sudden teary-eyed. They had somber expressions and they had gentle demeanors trying to console this patient. You know, that's something that it just changes your brain chemistry. I don't know how else to put it. And then you see more sides of human nature, where I heard about a story of this lady who had struggled to get pregnant for 10-15 years. She had gone through over 5 IVF treatments, and you know, one after another. Some were unsuccessful, some led to miscarriages, and then she finally ends up getting pregnant, and she turns around and she's smoking, and it's seriously putting the baby at risk. Like, there's clinical findings to suggest that the baby is at risk, and you know, she's smoking on top of that. So what do you do in that situation? Then I heard other stories of like this lady had come in and they were having difficulty conceiving a baby, and she had done all of her testing to figure out whether she's infertile or not, or whether there's a problem with her, but her partner refused to get any kind of testing. You hear that, what do you say? You know, you're exposed to these dynamics of marriage and people's problems that you wouldn't hear otherwise, right? But it happens, and you're the front row seat to a lot of things happening in other people's life. It's amazing, while at the same time questionable. It just, you know, I wish I had more to say, but what do you say in those situations? So I think obstetrics and gynecology really stares at life and that in the eye, day in and day out, and you are exposed to how incredible a new life is, how fragile and unpredictable pregnancy is. And I see doctors that truly, you know, they walk patients through the highs and the lows, the joy of pregnancy and joy of birth with the sadness of death, and I can only aspire to be like them. And they do this sometimes all in one day, which is the craziest part ever. And they go home and they live normal lives. You know, it takes a toll. I think it's a very emotional rotation, and I think in this rotation, the human part of medicine, away from the protocols, the human ability to speak to patients, to console, to care about patients is almost as practical, if not more important than your medical expertise. I think the take-home message of this video and my rotation was just how important family is, and I was reminded many times of how important family is. I don't think there's anything that trumps you doing things for your family. If you have a loving family, if you're in good health, I think you have the wealth of the world. You have everything good that this world can offer. And I truly think that, you know, I don't think I have any greater responsibility to anyone or anything other than my family. And I truly don't think that there's anything else, like whether that's career succession, whether that's money, that can bring me greater joy than what my family can bring me. And I think that's something that I realized over this rotation. And hold your loved ones close. That's all I had to share, and I wish anybody going through this rotation the best of luck. And I just wanted to request that you don't go through this rotation blindly. I know it's so easy to get caught up with studying, get caught up with work and all the jargon and technicalities and all of that, but do take a step back. I think the most valuable part is taking a step back, letting your thoughts breathe, reflecting on what people are going through. It's an incredible rotation, and I think what you can get out of this rotation is unlike any other. What you won't be able to get the same out of other rotations. So, you know, best of luck, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.